G'day folks, Scott here. Welcome to another video. Today I am reviewing Transformers: The Last Knight. Now Transformers: The Last Knight is now the 5th movie in the Transformers franchise. I guess on the short end here, if you're already a Transformers fan and you've liked all the previous movies, you're probably going to like this one as well. If you're a bit on the fence with this kind of thing, I would be of the opinion that Transformers Part 1 was okay because it was new and had great special effects and I'd never seen anything quite like it before. But the rest of them have sucked, and this is no exception. So there's my short review. If you've liked the 4 movies previous to this one, you're probably still going to like this. You've probably already gone to see it. If not, you're going to go see it. So, you know, it's just as good or bad as you determine the other ones to be. Now, everything I'm going to talk about from this point on will be pretty spoiler heavy, so be warned, you know, if you don't want to know anything about the story for this movie, because I'm going to go well into detail on it, because it's the only way I can really express how I feel about it. From this point on, we're spoiler town, guys, be warned. So, my wife, my daughter, and myself went and saw this movie last night. We got the tickets and were waiting to go in, you know, grabbing some stuff from the candy bar, and we looked down and see that the running time is 2 hours, 45 minutes. It's a long movie. The girls were immediately like, are you serious? It's 3 hours long, oh my god. And so we were already sort of on the cusp. On top of that, I'd had a friend call me earlier that day and warn me about something that really pissed him off with the movie, which I'll get to later. It's more on the technical side, but I really want to convey how insane the story is. So I'm kind of going to break it down. So here's the story. This movie begins with a battle with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table versus some Saxons, and they're doing the war thing, right? And King Arthur and his guys are going to lose, and it's looking really bad, and Arthur's like, we just got to wait for Merlin, Merlin's going to save us, Merlin's coming, blah, blah, blah. And we cut to Merlin, who's played, I think, by Stanley Tucci, as this drunken, babbling, attempted humour kind of Merlin, who finds a wrecked spaceship on the Highlands and climbs in the engine and meets a transformer and makes some kind of shaky deal where he ends up with this almighty powerful staff that lets him command a 3-headed robot dragon that then decimates the army, and they win the day. This is just in the first opening minutes. I'm not making this up. Then we cut to the present day in the Transformers universe, which is a little bit of time after the last movie where whole cities got destroyed in a big battle, and there's this city that's like an exclusion zone that's all fenced up and no one's allowed in there, and it's under penalty of death, and it's set in a time where there's like a world police, like a task force who hunt Transformers regardless of whether they're Autobots or Decepticons. They're all enemies of the world. And there's a girl who lives in this who's like going to become part of the story in this movie, and she lives in that, you know, forbidden city and has like a weird little cutesy droid friend and repairs stuff and sort of hangs out, I guess. And Mark Wahlberg ends up in there, and he's playing the same character he played in the previous movie, who saved the day in the last one. And he finds like a ancient knight robot for some reason in this city in like a crashed ship or something, and in its dying breath gives him this disc with like a, you know, kind of crucifix cross kind of symbol on it. And it turns out this disc came from King Arthur and the whole legend of him and Merlin and the Knights of the Round Table and all this kind of stuff. And he goes off. He takes the girl to a junkyard where he and all the other Transformers live, because apparently Grimlock and all the other dinosaur robot Transformers can easily hide in this junkyard from the cops who are constantly hunting him. And the way he stays by not getting caught is by only listening to his daughter speak on the telephone, not actually talking to her, so that way they can't trace him. You know, there's those awkward kind of attempts at humour and stuff as him and this new child character, like, sort of, you know, get along and become friends. And then, for some reason, those cops I was talking about earlier suddenly team up with the Decepticons, like Megatron and a couple of others, like the cop car one, Devastator or whatever his name is. And then they all come together to the junkyard, and there's like a fight, and then they go off to a little town, and there's another fight, and then all of a sudden, after the Autobots win and the Decepticons leave, this robot butler ninja guy who works for Anthony Hopkins' character shows up in America and convinces Mark Wahlberg to go back to England with him. I'm not making this up. The butler robot guy is like this kind of crass C-3PO kind of thing. They even tease it for being like C-3PO in the movie. And it's kind of schizophrenic. Sometimes it's all butlerish and sometimes it's all rude and swearing. And that kind of brings me to another point quickly on relation to these Transformers movies, specifically like these last few, is who is Michael Bay making these movies for? Now, Michael Bay's been making them for ages. He's good at what he does with action and I guess and explosions and special effects. You know, probably my favorite movies of his would be the Bad Boys movies, which I guess are a guilty pleasure, like buddy cop comedy action films. And I surprisingly really enjoyed Pain and Gain with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and Mark Wahlberg, which was supposedly based on a true story about these two muscle working out kind of guys who come up with this ridiculous crime they want to commit to make some money. And that movie was actually really good. And it's one of the few times I've ever seen, I'd say, people act in a Michael Bay movie. But anyway, Transformers as a franchise is for kids. Like, these are toys that have been around since I was a child for little boys. And I would deem the Transformers license to encapsulate, for the most part, you're 12 and under, right? Now, obviously, there's man-childs like me who still enjoy the things we grew up with, who are still going to be going to these films, but you got to expect for this to be a Paramount cross-Hasbro production. They want toy sales and stuff out of this, so it's targeted for kids, isn't it? Yet all of a sudden, it's an M-rated movie where they're saying bitch and pussy and shit all the time, and there's crass sort of sexual humor here and there and drug references and all these kind of things. Not so much drug references in this one, but one of the earlier ones, like the main character's parents took dope cookies at a university and his mum was off tap or something. Like, it's, I don't get the nature of where they're going with these. Anyway, back on point. So with the butler robot guy, I don't know whether myself, my wife, and my daughter just weren't in the mood for this, or whether we just didn't get the humor. But even like my daughter's going on 13, and a couple of times the butler thing had a couple of jokes where she like laughed out loud, and a couple of times throughout the movie I was like, at a few things. But the crowd around us, and there were a fair few people in that cinema, they were pissing themselves laughing. Like, the crowd were really enjoying it. They were loving all this like teenage dick and fart joke kind of college humor, which, if that's your thing, man, then good on you. And I'm glad everyone in the office was enjoying it, but I was just kind of like, the three of us were just kind of stunned at like, I feel kind of weird that everyone's laughing and we're not. Anyway, he convinces Wahlberg to go back to England with him. Meanwhile, Optimus Prime, who's been floating through space since the last movie, floating towards his old home planet where the Decepticons and the Autobots came from, called Cybertron, finally lands there, and there's this new kind of humanoid robot woman, tentacle hair, kind of Medusa kind of thing, kind of looks like the bad guy on the StarCraft video games. I don't even know what she was. She was a robot, but she wasn't a Decepticon or Autobot. And she convinces Prime that that staff that Merlin got given to control the dragon back in the day, which is buried with Merlin's body, is the only way to repair Cybertron. And she possesses him in such a manner that he kind of changes and becomes like a Terminator, and it's like, let nothing stand in your way. You go get that staff from Earth, you bring it back to me. The only way we can save Cybertron is by using that thing. Prime goes back. In England, we meet Anthony Hopkins, who's one of the last descendants of an order of nicely British gentlemen who have been aware of this whole thing with the connection between the Transformers and between, you know, humanity, and especially going back to the Knights of the Round Table and all that. The disc thing that Mark Wahlberg was given by the dead robot thing back in the other city attaches itself to him and like slithers around his body, and it turns out that he's like the last knight. He's chosen by that medallion to be a champion to help save the world. And he meets this girl who ends up being one of Merlin's like last descendants, and she's the only one who can wield the staff, and the staff is just as important to kill the bad guys as it is for the bad guys to repair the planet Cybertron. And then they're in a submarine going to a spaceship down the bottom of the ocean, and then they're floating to the surface and flying up into the sky, and then Cybertron collides with the Earth, and all these big parts of the planet reach out and scrape along it, and I'm not kidding. And it's crazy. And I know it's a science fiction, I know it's fantastical, and I know all these things, but the humor's poorly written. Mark Wahlberg was okay, like sometimes his character was likable and funny, sometimes it was kind of just drum and ho-hum, kind of just, you know, there for a paycheck. Hopkins was probably the best. He at least seemed to be having fun with the role. He got the closest to getting a laugh out of me. The girl was terrible. Like, she seemed to just be there for pretty looks, full lips, and the odd boob shot. And, you know, the kid disappeared for a whole part of the movie and then showed up again at the end. And then all of a sudden everybody's friends with the cops who they weren't friends with before. And then the Decepticons are the bad guys again. And I can't tell the difference between any of them, because apart from Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and like the John Goodman character with the beard and all the guns with the Autobots, and then Megatron and the cop car one with the Decepticons, the rest of them all look the same to me. I'm not a big Transformers person, so it's all just robots running around shooting at each other and slow motion and explosions and time freezing and all this, and I'm just like, half the time I don't know really what's going on. It has a big battle that's somehow set on Cybertron but also set on Earth, and it's all over the place. And the one thing I'll give this franchise, and specifically this movie, is it's absolutely gorgeous. The special effects are astoundingly good. They've done an incredible job with it. Like, it's just beautiful to look at. But the action, especially in that last 20 minutes, is so chaotic and so all over the place. And Michael Bay's put it together in such a manner that I couldn't lock onto anything, and I didn't know what was going on. Like I said, one minute they're in a submarine, then they're not, then they're up on Cybertron that's crashing to the Earth without somehow destroying our planet, and then they're fighting, and then the dragon thing's back, and they've got the Merlin staff, and then it turns out that Merlin staff would destroy our world to repair their world, so there's like a thing where, oh, do we save the Earth or do we save Cybertron? And it's all this shit going on, and it's just so much. But it had great special effects. I just couldn't follow it. One last little thing is the fact that part of this was filmed in IMAX. Really quickly, like, if you're familiar with Christopher Nolan, who made Interstellar and the Batman trilogy, the middle one was the first one we used IMAX. And if you watch that movie on Blu-ray, you'll notice a switch in aspect ratios on your TV. Like, your normal television is a 16:9 screen, but IMAX is shot in a different format to that, which is slightly less. Whereas most movies in your Cinevision, Panavision, whatever you want to call it, Cinescope, are shot in a 2.35 ratio, which means even on one of your widescreen TVs, you still get black bars. So in those Christopher Nolan movies, you would have a sequence of the Batman movie, like say in the one with the Joker in the second one, where there's that car chase where the Joker's in the truck and he's like rocket launching the van that Harvey Dent's in, and that whole sequence was shot in IMAX. So on your TV at home, it filled the whole TV. Yet outside of that, in regular scenes during that movie, you had the black bars at the top and the bottom, because they were the two formats used that the filmmaker Christopher Nolan chose to do. Michael Bay, I think, went with 3 film formats on this, but it's changing constantly throughout the whole movie. Like, literally, the friend who warned me, like I said earlier, before I went and saw this, he walked out on this because of those aspect ratio changes. They drove him mental. It didn't bother me as much, but I couldn't not notice it constantly happening. So there's like a black bar or no bar where the screen is like do throughout the whole movie. I shit you not. And apparently Michael Bay and Paramount Pictures sent directives to all cinemas screening these that even if it's not being screened in IMAX, this is director's option. This is how the director wants this movie to be viewed. And it was kind of chaotic and crazy. Like, mentioning the Christopher Nolan one was that there was a 4 to 10 minute sequence of the movie that was all in one aspect ratio, and then it would change back to the other one for a vast amount of time and come back again for another action sequence. This is just camera shots. Like, sometimes there's camera showing me from this angle in one format, and then a camera showing me from a wide shot on the other side in a different format. So it's just people talking or moving through an environment, and it's doing this thing, and it's crazy. That was really, really stupid. Look, overall, it was a shit movie. It really was. Like, I really can't understand why they keep giving Michael Bay this much money to make movies this big when you've got brilliant original bits of work out there with, you know, overseas directors like Neil Blomkamp, who obviously been around for ages, or, you know, the guy who made Get Out recently, and you could make 100 movies on their budgets on what was spent on this Transformers movie, and they'll probably all be better. So, look, I'm sure I've got more to complain about, but really that's it. It was just chaotic. I didn't know what was going on most of the time. The story made no sense. It was laughably stupid. I feel like it's made for adults but written for children. It's like I said, it doesn't know its own identity. None of the actors seem to be doing a great job or particularly wanting to be there. The only star of the movie was the special effects and the Transformers themselves, but although they incrementally look better as every movie goes on, you've seen it all before. Guys, that's all I've got. Unless you're a die-hard fan, give it a miss. Go see something else. We're a couple of weeks out from Spider-Man. Go see Wonder Woman again. Like, your money's better spent on that. I'll be back in a few weeks to review Spider-Man unless anything else I haven't thought of comes out sooner. As always, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check out my other review videos, and I'll be back again soon. Thanks.